This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Just imagine if you're walking innocently along the beach area and minding your own business. It's a regular day, nothing special. Taking a walk, hear the sound of the sea, the sound of the waves. It's beautiful, it's very relaxing, it's very, very nice. And as you're walking, you hear like splashing. Sounds very interesting. So you give a closer look, you stop for a moment to see is everything okay, what's going on, and you suddenly you see like a head bobbing, up and down. There's something wrong going on over here. At first you think maybe the guy is, testing his snorkel, or, testing his underwater camera, or whatever it might be, but eventually you see that there's something wrong, and you can hear him gasping, and you start running and close. There's nobody else around. The place is a deserted place, it's empty, you took a walk there by yourself. There's nobody there. It's just you. It's all on you. And you take your jacket off, you've got these heavy boots, and you flick them off, and you just run into the water without any thought. You're not even a good swimmer. You don't even know how to swim, never mind a good swimmer. But there's no cheshbonos, there's no calculations. You just go. And you go in there, and you go all the way down to where you see, and eventually he sees that you're coming, and he's like, help me. And you take his arm, and you slowly find a way to schlep him back, and by the time you schlep him back, there are other people who obviously passed or heard or whatever it is, and they've come to the scene, and everybody's there to see the hero of today who saved this person's life, and it's unbelievable, and you just give him a little bit of CPR, whatever, and Baruch Hashem, he makes it, you go to the hospital with him, and it's unbelievable. And can you imagine what that feels like? Can you imagine what it means to save somebody's life? To save somebody's life. Chazal tell us that when you save somebody's life, it's as if you've saved the whole world. Just imagine if he was a young fellow that was about to get married, and he gets married, he has children. Those children have children. Can you imagine the generations and generations of people, of Doris, that you saved? All because of you. Can you imagine what that is? What a schar, what reward, what a hero, what a chashav yid, unbelievable, look at you. Amazing, eh? But down the road, from where you were standing, and where you did this very, very chashav, important act of saving somebody's life, there was one of these rundown beis medrashes, like one of those small places with the dingy lights, a couple of svarim, little bookshelves at the back over there. Not much going on. There was no coffee, no air conditioning. No, it wasn't like a shmakamatzev. A little rundown beis medrash. And there was a fellow there who was sitting there and he was trying to figure out a pshat in a Mishnah, trying to figure out a pshat in a Tosfos. It was difficult, it was hard. It wasn't so easy for him. The reading was hard, the explanation was hard, there was no art scroll. Life was hard. And he sat there trying to figure out this Mishnah, or this Pshat in the Ramban on the Chumash. Says Chazal Rabbi Isai, in the Gemara in Megillah Daf Tezayin Omid Beis, it's a Chazal that every person over here has to have in his mind at every moment for the rest of his lives. Says Chazal, Omer Reb Yosef, Gadol Talmud Torah Yosef Matzolois Nefashos. You got that person that saved somebody's life. He went into the water, he risked his own life, and he saved somebody which saved generations and generations of people. Because he went and saved somebody's life. What reward does he get? And yet Chazal tell us that the person that's sitting in a beis medrash with a Mishnayos, with a Chumash, with a Gemara, with a Mishnah Berurah, whatever it is, and he's sitting and he's learning Torah. Didn't say finishing Shas, didn't say writing svarim, giving shiurim, none of that. Just sitting and learning a Posek of Chumash. Just sitting and learning a Mishnah. You are greater than that person that saved that person's life. Now, it's an unbelievable thing. The Sifsei Chachomim on the Gemara over there, Megillah Zayin writes, what's the reason? She says, number one, that Torah protects. Torah protects a person. We spoke about this previously. Another thing he says is Hatzalas Nefashos saves somebody's life, saves their guf in their physical manner, but a person that learns Torah, it lasts also for the next world as well, and it goes into and penetrates his neshama. Says the Taz in Yeridei and Hilchos Talmud Torah, don't think for a moment that chas v'shalom if a person is in a situation where he has to save somebody's life, to say, hey guys, sorry, I can't go in there right now, I'm a lifeguard, but I can't go in there because I have my pocket Mishnah Berurah with me, and I've got to learn my Mishnah Berurah right now. Chas v'shalom. Says the Taz, we don't say that. Avad, if you're in a situation of pikuach nefesh, that's what you have to do. There's nothing that comes in front of pikuach nefesh. If you're in a situation where you can save someone's life, that's what you need to do. That's not the question of Chazal. The question in Chazal isn't what should you do. The question is, who's greater? The person that saved the person's life and generations after him, or the person that learns one posek of Chumash, or one Mishnah, or a bit of Gemara, or whatever it may be on his level, what he does. It's an unbelievable thing, Rabbi, and we just take it for granted. We don't appreciate it. We all sit in front of Sfarim all the time. Now, and when we go away, wherever we're going to be going to. I don't appreciate what this is like. Everybody would, for the rest of that guy's life, say, do you remember you saved that person's life? Remember. This is like a special thing, and you have an anniversary, and you make a whole party from it, because wow, it saved somebody's life. And Chazal are telling us that you're greater than that. Sit and open a sefer and learn something. You are on a higher level, more reward than the person that saved that person's life. And we all know the Mishnah. When the Mishnah tells us in Peah, Shulchan Aruch brings it in Yeridei, Rosh Yeshiva as well. Talmud Torah shakul keneged kol mitzvahs. You know what that means? That means take all the mitzvahs that we do. And Baruch Hashem, Klal Yisrael, we're full of myriad mitzvahs, unbelievable mitzvahs. The Rebbeinu Shalom gives us chus to bekayim mitzvahs every single day throughout the day. And throughout the year, special mitzvahs. We've got the Lulav and Esrog. We've got the Heilige Matzah. We've got Tefillin, we've got Tzitzis, we've got Netilas Yadayim, we've got Birchas HaMazon. We've got wonderful mitzvahs. Take every single one of those mitzvahs, every sukkah, every lulav and esrog, every matzah, every megillah, every Chanukah menorah, take every tefillin, tzitzis, brachas hamazon, take every bracha, take every netilas yadayim, take anything you want and put it into one capsule, put it into one little thing. It doesn't equal a word Omar Rava. It just doesn't equal, it just doesn't work. When a person comes along and learns a word of Torah, it's Ki'ilu, says Chazal, it's a Mishnah, Rabbi Yisai. We say this every morning. It's work every single mitzvah that moment. Omar, every single one. Rava, every single one. Tana Rabbanan, every one. We don't appreciate it. We take it for granted. Big deal. We do learn, we don't learn. We've spoken about this, but I want to give it one last push. Before Ben Zmanim, before vacation, before holiday time, before a time when we're going out. It's not so easy to be in the base measure. It's not so easy to always learn. But you have to realize that Nefesh HaChaim and Shadalat, we probably mentioned this so many times, that Nefesh HaChaim writes, Reb Chaim Volozhin, that if the world would be for one moment without a word of Torah, that means if the entire world would be silent of Torah, there wouldn't be one word of Torah uttered in the entire world, says the Nefesh HaChaim, Reb Chaim Volozhin and Shar Daled, the entire world will go back to Torah Vo. The whole world will disintegrate. Because the purpose of the world is for Torah. And if a person's not learning Torah, it doesn't work. That's why the Chassam Sofer famously says, that's why there's 2 days of Purim. Why are there 2 days of Purim? Some people keep Yudalin, some people keep Tesvav. Says the Chassam Sofer, because we want people learning Torah all the time. People learning on Purim, good Shaila. But that's what the Chassam Sofer says. Now the Gedolim understood this. Gedolim understood this. Rav Shach, when Rav Shach Zatzal was an older person, his wife said to him at one point, you need to sleep at some point, you need to have koiches to learn, you need to go to sleep. And he said, okay. So he went to sleep. 2 hours later, at 4 o'clock in the morning, he's not in his bed anymore. Where's Rav Shach? And she goes looking around the house, and she found, the place is dark, there's no lights, can't switch on a light. Where's Rav Shach going to be able to learn? He found a little flame. That is like the ignition flame that lights up the heating place. You know those machines that had that little flame over there? So Rav Shach was standing there with the Rambam, trying to see through that little flame over there. Because the Rambam meant so much to him. Every word meant so much to him. He's going to do that. Rav Avadia Zatzal. Chacham Avadia, unbelievable Maisa. I mean, there's so many of them. By so many Gedolim. But just to mention a few. Rav Avadia Zatzal was once in his house. It was a late at night, and all the lights went out. There was a power cut. So he didn't know what to do. Rav Avadia, without his sforim, without lights, how are you going to live? What's going to be? He went outside to the street, and there were street lamps. So he figured, I'll just learn over here. So they passed him by Mariv time. They passed Rav Avadia was standing there with his sforim by the street lamp, and he was learning. All right, so they figured, they saw what happened, they understood what happened. Okay, so he wants to learn. But they came later and the next morning by Nate's, and he was still standing in the same position, reading by the light over there to understand the Sfarim. Rabbi said, these are Gedolim that understood what Torah is. They understood what every single word of Torah, famous Meiser, Rav Moshe. I mean, how many Meisers can we say about Rav Moshe? But Rav Moshe, somebody came once over to Rav Moshe by Yeshiva Brachos, and they asked Rav Moshe a shaila. And Rav Moshe answered. I gave the answer, whatever the answer was. He said, Rebbe, but the Pri Megadim says not that way. I said, Beseda. They came back. I said, Rebbe, the Pri Megadim says not like you. I said, Beseda. Eventually, countless time, he was coming over. He said, eventually got him a Pri Megadim. He says, Rebbe, look, here's the Pri Megadim. Moshe turned to him and said, I've learned this Pri Megadim 378 times. I know the Pri Megadim. Don't tell me. This is a Yid that knew it already, but he did it and he did it and he did it because he understands the chashivas of every single word of Torah. He knew what it meant. The Gemara in Bracha, Kav Halacha Beis tells us a famous Maisa. The Gemara says they found, after the kings made a decree, they issued a decree, no one's allowed to be Isaac b'Torah. No one's allowed to learn Torah. Gemara in Bracha, Kav Halacha Beis. No one's allowed to learn Torah. They found Rabbi Akiva was learning. They said, Rabbi Akiva, you're not worried? They made Xera, who knows what's going to happen to you? Can't learn Torah. So Rabbi Akiva said, let me tell you a mashal. There was a fox that was strolling next to the river. And he sees that these fish are going from place to place to place to place. And he's going all over the place. He said, fish, what are you doing? They said, we're worried. So the fox said, what are you worried about? We're worried about the nets of the human beings that come with these huge nets and they come and catch us and they take us. So the fox said, I have a great idea. Come with me. I'll show you a great place on the land where you can hide away from those nets. The fish said to the fox, you fool. Because in the place that we can actually live, and we're scared, culture getting up there where we can't even live, we won't be able to breathe. Said Rabbi Akiva, Torah isn't just a nice thing to do. It's not just a course in university that you just have to take. This is a period in your life that you just have to learn, go through it, finish your year in Israel, or 2 years, or 3, if you get brainwashed 4 or 5, whatever it is, and just finish it. Because I did it. I'm Yaitza. I bought the t-shirt. I learned, I did my time in yeshiva. I'm a great boy. And you'll tell your kids one day, when they say to you, Dad, Kedushin, we're learning Masechtas Kedushin. You say, Masechtas Kedushin, wow. I remember doing that in yeshiva. That's unbelievable. The only remember you have is the underlines that you did on the Rashis next to the Gemara over there. I have no other memory because it was just a memory of something that we did. Rabbi Akiva is telling us that Torah isn't just something that we learn. It's life itself. And we say it in marriage. We just said it 10 minutes ago. Ki heim chayenu. What is it, a joke? It's a song. So we'll all sing the song together and we mean it. We understand what we're talking about. Ki heim chayenu means this is our lifeblood. It's what gives us life. We spoke about this previously. How it keeps up the world. It keeps us as a yid. It keeps us solid. But it goes more than that. And this is why I want to speak about it now. Not only in the learning itself, which is unbelievably choshev, and Chazal tell us it keeps up the world, and it keeps unbelievable thing, and it's greater than the binyan base hamikdash, and it's greater than kibbutz of aim, as the Gemara says over there in Megillah Tazayinam base. Unbelievable. But it goes a little bit further, and that is not only when you're actually learning the Torah, but when you're living the Torah. That's another level as well. The famous mashal from the son of the Alter of Kelm, Rav Nachman Zev, the Alter of Kelm's son. He said over the mashal, he said there are a group of people sitting around the table, and they're all eating. You don't notice any difference between them. They're all sitting there, schmoozing, eating, drinking, everything's great. Until all of a sudden they get up to leave. And every single person gets up to leave, and there's one person still at the table, he's not able to leave. You know why he's not able to leave? Because he's got no legs. When they all stood and sat there by the table together, eating and drinking and talking, you didn't notice the difference. But it's when they leave the table, that's when it gets difficult. That's when you see the difference. Says the Alter of Kelm's son, Reb Nachman Zev, it's the same thing with us by learning Torah. When we're in the Beis Medrash and you're in a yeshiva and it's easy, there's 3 minyonim, Shachris, Mincha, and Mariv, there's Rebbe and there's shiurim, and again, this is also for people that are not in yeshiva, people that have a seder, have a schedule. It's easy. It's great. You don't see the difference between one person and another. When it gets to holiday time, it gets to vacation time, it gets to time where everything's not maybe on a silver platter, served to you easily, then we'll see the difference between the person that really lived the Torah and the person that didn't live the Torah. As the Baalei Mussar write, this is the mashal for every person that leaves the walls of the Beis Medrash. That's the pshat. As Rabbi Lopian writes in Lev Eliyahu and Parshas B'chukoisai, in B'chukoisai Telechu, go with the Torah. A person should take the Torah with him. Wherever you go, whatever you do, take the Torah with you. The learning, the midas, tovas, everything goes together. In the year 1894, it is Isru Chag Pesach. And a young Meir Shapiro, we may know him more famously as Rabbi Shapiro, who started the DaforYomi. He was 7 years old in 1894, and his mother was crying. And he said to his mother, "Mommy, why are you crying?" She said, "You know why I'm crying? Because your Malamed didn't come today, your Rebbe never come. He was supposed to come, he hasn't showed up yet." So he said, "Mommy, but why are you crying?" So she said, "Meila, you just don't understand, you're too young. If you miss one day of learning, it can never be replaced." And that thought went into his heart and penetrated into his heart, into his fiber of his being, because he created the DaforYomi where every person learns every single day. In fact, the Gemara tells us, a famous Chazal, which Posek is the Posek of the Torah? Which Posek capsulates, gives us an idea and understanding into the whole Torah? What can it be? So Chazal Taras Ben Zoyma answered, he decided that the essence of the Torah is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. What could be greater than that Posek? Ben Pazi came along and said, so we'll go to Ben Nanas. Ben Nanas said, V'afta l'reicha kamoicha, v'afta l'reicha kamoicha, v'nodon l'chaveiroi. That's the most choshev Posek in the Torah. Came along Ben Pazi and said a very interesting Posek to his answer. And that was Esakeves achol taseh baboyke v'esakeves hasheni taseh ben ha'boy, in the korban tomid that was offered every single day. That is the most important part, the Posek of the Torah. And the question is why? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hashem is our God. Come on, that's the greatest. Rabbi Akiva, we spoke about this by Shavuos. That's the Ikka, right? Kol HaTorah Kulai, everything. What's Esakeves every single day? The Talmud. Okay, very nice, but what's that? The encapsulating of the Torah. The answer is because if a person understands what Torah is, and if a person appreciates what Torah is, he'll appreciate the continuous learning and being there and doing every single day without fail. That's what Torah is meant to do to a person. That's what Torah is meant to accomplish to a person. That a person has an always learning, Yomon V'Loila, whenever he gets the opportunity. There's no such thing as vacation from Torah, holiday from Torah, there's no such thing. Because Torah, as we said, is greater than Atzolos Nefoshes. Rav Gifter's daughter, Rebbetzin Eisenberger, once said over that they told over the incident by the Shiva of her grandfather, Rav Gifter's father that was, that when thousands of Talmidim came to Machmah Oval, they said over, they asked Rosh Yeshiva, how was he able to remember everything that he learned? Rav Gifter wasn't known to have an encyclopedic memory, it wasn't unbelievable photographic memory, but he remembered everything he learned. How did you do that? That's what they asked Rav Gifter. And he answered, he said, because it wasn't because I had a good memory, but it was because of fear. He said, because when he learned the Tosfos, he thought this might be the last thing I ever learn. If it's the last thing I ever learn, I'm going to come to Shemayim and Hashem's going to forgive me and say, hey, what did you learn today? And I'm going to forget that. It's going to be pretty embarrassing. When you're scared to forget your Torah, when you understand the chashivas of every word of Torah, then you're going to remember it. Rabbi said that's the lesson for us. The lesson for us is a lesson to understand what it means to learn a word of Torah. It isn't just a nice thing to do, but it's an essence of a yid, an essence that keeps up the world. It's the thing that gives us the greatest schar of the entire world. And next time you open up your Mishnayos, next time you open up your Chumash or your Gemara, or whatever it is that you're learning, take appreciation that right now you're getting more reward than somebody that's saving someone at sea. We should all be Zoicha Be'ez Hashem, to have a fulfilling Bein Hazmanim, a good holiday, a good vacation, but take the Torah with us, as we said. Don't let the Torah schlep us to different places. We should schlep the Torah with us wherever we go, Be'ez Hashem. Have a wonderful night.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.